Malov became very critical of the scientific establishment, what he termed the academic government complex. He saw it as more of a problem than the military-industrial complex. Something notable about Dr. Malov was that he was an MIT scientist that came out against the mainstream and was advocating for scientists that were on the cutting edge of this research. In an interview between Malov and George Norrie of Coast to Coast AM, Malov describes in his own words the academic government complex.
I just believed that the scientific establishment was pretty much on the up and up, and that they would have tried to address the new claim with justice and curiosity. They always claimed to be interested in new frontiers. But I found, to my great dismay, increasingly that they were not interested in new things really. They were interested primarily in getting rid of a new idea that quite radically upset their apple cart. The people that were most threatened by this did it in a negative and most egregious way. They were my former colleagues at MIT and the hot fusion program. MIT gets tens of millions of dollars every year to research how to make multi-million, 200 million degree temperatures to create the kind of fusion they believe is going on in the core of the sun and create helium. And that would indeed be an infinite supply of energy from water because the fuels are in water. But they haven't succeeded. And they've spent in the United States alone an estimated $20 billion, not million, $20 billion since the early 1950s. And they're still going at it. When Pons and Flashman came out with that astounding announcement 12 hours before the Exxon Valdez ran aground, ironically, they were shocked. Now they didn't believe it, and they immediately assembled all reasons to doubt it. First from a theoretical point of view, and then they began to bring up all kinds of bogus and in some cases quite bluntly fraudulent reasons against Pons and Flashman for throwing the whole thing in the trash can. The U.S. Department of Energy made the rush to judgment within 6 months. They had a negative report, and that stamp of disapproval has lasted since then. On March 23, 1989, in the afternoon in Salt Lake City, the astounding announcement came from 2 world-class chemists. Though no one has heard from them since, they are both still alive. Dr. Flashman in particular, a fellow that we're all deciding is one of the world's most famous chemists, a brilliant man. And it was his driving force that brought the idea initially to the floor. We worked with Dr. Stanley Pons, then an American, who was the head of the chemistry department of the University of Utah. Dr. Flashman attends regularly all the international meetings. He participates in the Italian program, a small official Italian program in this area, just several $1 million a year. And it's kind of mislabeled. It's not giving the cold fusion a low energy reaction name, but it's there nonetheless. And Stanley Pons changed his citizenship, but I do understand his feelings in the early 1990s. He was sick and tired of being called a fraud. So he moved to France with Dr. Flashman and worked under Japanese auspices Minolta Toyota. One of the founders of Toyota funded them in a laboratory in the south of France in Nice for many years, and they had great success. And their work was even published in peer-reviewed journals in 1993. And it still had no effect. Getting back to our original issue here, the academic government complex, not the military-industrial complex as much as the academic government complex, is against new scientific ideas that threaten the foundations of their work. And they, no matter how many papers are published, I don't care whether they are on the internet or not on the internet, or whether they are the establishment, the academic government complex is brain dead. It's remarkable, almost 15 years now, after that fateful day of March 23, 1989, I continue to evolve in my understanding of the well of emotional and the psychological and intellectual knowledge, to borrow a term from the famous Wilhelm Reich, that scientists have. It's astounding. One physicist at MIT, whose name Dr. Hermann Feshbach, one of the world's foremost nuclear physics people, now he's deceased, but at MIT, as I was finishing up my time there as a senior person in the MIT news office as a science journalist, he had played a role in getting rid of a major article of mine that was going to appear in the MIT magazine, a very influential magazine called Technology Review. It's on the newsstands all over the place. He said to me, "I've had over 50 years of experience in nuclear physics, and I know what's possible, what's not possible." And then that was it. That was his total statement, which I would cite forever as a statement, a kind of statement that should never come out of the mouth of any person who consider themselves a legitimate scientist. They're not a scientist if they say, based on previous knowledge and theory that I have, I know for all time what is possible and what is not. That's obviously crazy.